Blue White Illustrated here just outside the field at Beaver Stadium, a place that will be transformed over the next few days into a sea of white. The 2023 whiteout game is up and coming. It's against the Iowa Hawkeyes. We're here to talk about James Franklin's press conference and some of the things that he talked about today, some of the questions he was asked. One of the things that came up pretty early today was Drew Aller. How's he going to handle his first whiteout? Yeah. And Nate Bauer, senior editor here at Blue White Illustrated, we had a conversation about this, like, James Franklin's response to that kind of, I think we both agree with, is like, he's a quarterback now. He's been here for 2 years.
Yeah, he manifested what has been kind of a conversation point for the last few weeks, which is how many times can you go through the first conversation, right? Because it's everything, right? It's your first preseason camp as the projected starter. It's your first game as a starter. It's your first road game as a starter, right? So he's been through all of those things. And so when James Franklin was asked today about Drew Aller's first whiteout as a starter, it's like, okay, we've done this. We've been through this. There's going to be juice for everybody to deal with, right? Every single person on Penn State's football team, every single person on Iowa's football team are going to have to process and work through the realities of what is undeniably an awesome atmosphere, right? It's so cool. The novelty has not worn off. It's great. But that doesn't mean that that Drew Aller has never experienced anything before, right? You play the game. And so after, I think Franklin said it, after about 30 seconds of appreciation before the game, soak it all in, right? Like, let all of that absorb into your psyche and then play football, right? When the whistle starts, play football. That's what his expectation is of Drew Aller, and I think that's what his expectation is of the entire football program.
Yeah, and Drew Aller has gone through, like I said, kind of in the open, the long preamble of that question is he's been here for 2 years. He's been through a whiteout as a backup. Like, if you're a quarterback, these things are not supposed to affect you. That's the whole point of Drew Aller and what he can be as a quarterback, is in terms of the unflappable part of who he is. And I think that maybe last week some people looked at the stat line and the 48% completion percentage as, okay, he was flapped. Like, he got flapped, but when you go back and you review, and this was kind of the theme that's going to come up throughout this conversation, because it was a theme that came up through the other conversation, is stats don't tell the whole story. And we'll get to that in just a second, but one of the stats that does matter to James Franklin is explosive plays. Running backs have not gotten those explosive plays so far. It's a fair question. What was his response to a very fair question about how they're being played?
Yeah, it's very straightforward. Opponents that Penn State has played thus far, excluding Delaware, and even Delaware, right? Like, even a FCS school is going to present looks that are unfavorable from a numbers perspective to Penn State. That is effectively what he said, is everybody that they've played thus far has made sure, has gone into these matchups saying, how can we have one more player than them that is around the line of scrimmage? And so that's what you've seen. You've seen so much of it, and the only way to break it is to have some more consistency, I think probably, admittedly, to take more shots, right? To take more opportunities, get the passing game together a little bit more between Aller and his receivers. Certainly the fact that they were lacking Trey Wallace last weekend did not help to that end, but there is this undercurrent of reality that has not necessarily been talked about enough, of these running backs are just going to have to be patient. They're just going to have to deal with it for a little while. These are the looks that they're going to get. It is in some ways, I should say, running into a brick wall. That's what you're doing, and you got to try to find ways to get them the ball in space. It may take some unique play calling, some creativity, but this is what they have to deal with, and it's not going to change until Drew Aller and the receivers prove that it has to change from a defensive perspective.
So the explosive plays are something that James Franklin talks about all the time. He talked about the explosive play battle in the press conference, but he also talks about, explosive plays and turnovers. It's funny. This is going to come up tomorrow on the BWI Live show, talking about you can't have both. We're talking about on the defensive side of the football. So sacks, Adisa Isaac, Chop Robinson, and Dennis Sutton don't have a whole lot of sacks right now, but
Fitz said it yesterday. He literally said, if you have sacks, you're not going to get turnovers necessarily in terms of interceptions. If you have interceptions, then the quarterback was obviously able to get the ball off, but usually there's an underlying reality there of they were forced into making a pass before they were comfortable or earlier prematurely than they should have. And that's how the interceptions came to be. So there's this whole conversation. Today felt to me like James Franklin was saying about just about every position group that the entire concept of team football is what's most important right now.
Right.
Because you have players who the expectations are sky high for. Kalen King, he brought it up, right? That Kalen King is playing great football, is playing very well, and doesn't have the stats to back that up. Why? Because nobody's throwing him the ball. Nobody's throwing it in his direction. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Theo Johnson, Tyler Ward, right? All of these stars for Penn State that don't have stats right now are in many ways because they're stars, because of what defenses and offenses are trying to do to them. And so from the defensive side of the ball, those defensive ends, they don't have sacks because every single team that Penn State has played thus far is trying to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands as quickly as they possibly can. And that's just what they're going to, again, they're going to continue to face that until teams say, hey, we're tired of throwing interceptions, right? We don't want to do this anymore. We would rather take the sack. A 7-yard loss is better than giving the ball away.
What you're hearing in the background is you're hearing them loading up all the white paint for the whiteout later today. I'm Thomas Frankar. He's Nate Bauer. I should have mentioned this a long time ago. Sign up right now for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Get 50% off your year-long subscription. It is well worth your time from a recruiting perspective alone this week. The information you're going to get from Fitz and from Ryan is exceptional. You have our film breakdowns. You have his notebooks and his inside information about Penn State and what they're prepared for, what they're thinking about, what's being the temperature of the building inside instead of the external view. And that's where I want to transition to our final topic here. And this is something I tried to ham-handedly ask here of like, how do you maintain your guideposts of what you want to be as a program, what you think is best, but then, tweak it along the way and make sure you don't become stale. And basically his point was you have to put people in a position to succeed. Yep. And you have to play good football. Regardless of stats, you don't need to chase stats. And that's, I think, really the main theme today was James Franklin talked about you've got to know football to appreciate the fact that Hunter Norzad is the offensive player of the game because the stats won't tell you that. Yep. But you play good football within the confines of what you want to be, and the results will come not for just the individual player and their statistics, but also the program and the belief in what they are externally. So I guess when it comes down to that particular part of the conversation, how do you, if you don't, like from the outside, how do you balance those two things of, stats are important, but the other things you just can't know unless you're inside the building?
I mean,
I threw you the worst question possible.
No, look, I think that they feel confident and comfortable with the team that they are right now. Yeah. There's kind of a reality to that, and this is one of the points that he didn't really hammer home, but I thought was a big one, is having the Illinois experience before Iowa is instructive. Yeah. That is a good thing for this team to have gone through. But it's not – there's a little bit of a difference between seasons where maybe you don't play anybody in the first 3 weeks and then you go into a game like this against a traditionally, foundationally strong opponent and you got to guess, right? You don't know exactly who and what you are. He used the word litmus test about Illinois, That's a huge part of this is, okay, they had an experience against West Virginia. West Virginia just beat Pitt. That's a decent win. Yep. They have had experiences so far this season that have created a team that they can feel confident has developed, has grown, is gotten better, has been through things, and is engaged in that trajectory of becoming the best football team that they can be by the end of the season. So, that's where they are right now. They're going to get it again on Saturday night. They're going to see what this Iowa team looks like and see how they stack up against it. But in terms of how they're built and all of the things that go into what Penn State football is right now, they're comfortable. They feel good about it. They're confident, and they're going to move from there.
Find out more at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Sign up right now for 50% off and follow us along on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. If you're watching this and you're a new subscriber, or if you're not a subscriber yet, please hit the subscribe button because we're bringing you all kinds of great content, including a tailgate show coming up at 4:30 before kickoff. We're giving you the good stuff. Former Penn State defensive tackle Aeneas Hawkins going to give you his view of the whiteout of Iowa, all of that stuff. So please stay tuned. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. He's Nate Bauer. This is Blue White Illustrated.